Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to the first official post-game reaction of the season. I just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers snapped a 7-game opening night losing streak to win at home and to win on opening night for the first time since 2016, when D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle were still Lakers together. So Lakers win 110-103, beat the Minnesota Timberwolves on opening night, get JJ Redick his first win as a head coach. What's up, big baby? What's up, Helena, my wife? What's up, everybody in the chat? Thank you guys for joining me. So as you guys know the drill, I'm going to be doing 3 takeaways from tonight's game, and then getting into some Q&A. I do have to keep it to about 30 minutes tonight because I have to finish writing, but just wanted to tap in with you guys and discuss this game because, I mean, my mind is fried right now. It's been a long day. We had shoot around this morning. I've been podcasting this morning and writing, then had the game, got there super early, all the madness with the LeBron, Bronny stuff. So a lot to get into, but I want to start with the JJ Redick imprint. That's my first takeaway from this game. And we heard since the summer with JJ Redick about all these grand changes and the differences in how the Lakers wanted to run their offense, their defense, the rotation, the guys that they wanted to empower. And we heard about it at media day and training camp and in the preseason. And we saw some of it for sure, but the Lakers really only had a couple of halves in the preseason where we saw the 9-man rotation. We saw what this could potentially look like. So in many ways, like, JJ had wanted that Phoenix game to be a dress rehearsal, even though LeBron and Rui ended up not playing in that game, but the preseason game. But tonight was really the dress rehearsal for the Lakers. The first time that they played a full game with this group, their normal rotation. And they backed up everything basically that they've been talking about for months in terms of offensively. This group, like I asked Chris Finch about it pregame, of what have been your early impressions of the Lakers in the preseason. And he talked about this group having better ball movement and just off-ball movement and different wrinkles for shooters. And like, we saw all of that. And this was going up against the league's best defense last year by about 3 points per 100 possessions. So the Minnesota Timberwolves were the best defense in the NBA by a mile last year. They have 2 all-defense caliber guys in Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards on the perimeter, the reigning defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert, another really good perimeter defender, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I thought Dante DiVincenzo played some pretty good defense tonight as well. So like, this is a group with a lot of size, a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, the type of group that could give the Lakers some problems. And LA was just, I mean, the thing that stands out to me from the box score is 7 turnovers, like 7. And JJ mentioned last year that the opponent low for turnovers against the Timberwolves was 8, and the Lakers wanted to try and beat it, and they did. They got 7 on opening night. So, and with Minnesota, obviously with the Julius Randle trade, the Dante DiVincenzo trade, they're still working in their pieces. They only had 1 half together with this group, but I think for the Lakers, like, obviously they're focusing on themselves, and it's about how they look. And I thought they looked great. And they did not make, they shot 5 for 30 on threes, only 16.7%. Did get to the free throw line a lot. We're 21 for 25 there, 84%. But only took 6 mid-range jumpers outside of the paint. So basically everything was either at the rim or from behind the 3-point line, which is exactly what JJ wants. I briefly connected with him after the game, and we were kind of talking through the shot quality, and he was like, that's it. That's what we want. We want shots at the rim, shots in the paint, or threes. None of those in between mid-range jumpers. So, I mean, for the most part, we saw that during the preseason, and then we continued to see that tonight and on the opening night stage. And like, the Lakers as I said it at the top, they've lost 7 straight opening nights, and for them to snap that streak, for JJ to, I think, make an imprint on this game. Again, offensively, defensively, they were throwing out some 2-3 zone, some 3-2 zone. I thought being really smart and aggressive with their helping did lead to some fouling. And I look at a guy like Max Christie, he ended up with 5 fouls, and Lakers did foul a lot, and that's partly how Minnesota got back into the game in the second and third quarter. But like this was, to me, the blueprint for how the Lakers need to play moving forward. I think if they have this type of effort on both ends, also should shout out the offensive rebounding, 15 offensive rebounds. They had 6 guys grab offensive rebounds, and whether it was Rui, AD, Austin Reeves led the team with 4. Bronny had 1, Max had 1. Jackson Hayes was active. He had not a great game defensively. I feel like Minnesota was able to attack him with their own offensive rebounding and finishing, but defensively rather with Jackson. But offensively, he was awesome. Ended up with 10 points, 4 rebounds. So to kind of just wrap up the JJ point, like he comes in, as we all know, JJ always has his perfectly coiffed hair, and he's very particular with his look, and he comes in post game and his hair is disheveled, it's wet, he's got water dripping on the post game dais there, and the Lakers gave him, and deservedly so, a water bottle shower after the game. They dumped a bunch of water on him, and like he deserved it, because again, like I think his imprint in this game, just in terms of the rotation, he played the starters a lot, which is something that we didn't always see last season. And I think I'm going to touch on the rotation in a little bit, but I just thought overall he pushed a lot of the right buttons, and this was about as good of a debut as realistically possible. Obviously, the Lakers could have shot the ball better, shot 44% overall, again, just 16.7% on threes, and certainly like but they also only took 33s, which is actually fewer than they attempted on a nightly basis last season. So I think that they realized that going to the rim with the way that Minnesota was zoning up against them, and with their transition defense, LA was able to attack them in transition, and then also attack the zone with cuts and different wrinkles and decoy actions. So I thought LA's offense in particular looked really good. The defense was good. Obviously, Anthony Edwards, 27 points on 25 shots. Like that's about as good as it gets. And LA doesn't have a great matchup for an Anthony Edwards. So I thought, all things considered, like he got hot from 3, made 5 of 13, but only took 3 free throws, so they kept him off the free throw line. And I just thought their backline defense, the backline rotation, the backline zoning up, they did a really good job of playing team defense. And just overall, like the attention to detail of, and everyone being locked in, everyone boxing out, being aggressive. These were the things that we saw in flashes last season, and we rarely saw for full games, for full halves, for full quarters. And of course, they're going to make mistakes. There's going to be slip-ups. But I thought for the most part, like this was as locked in as I can remember this group playing. And certainly there's a lot of buy-in with JJ Redick and this coaching staff and the way that they're playing right now. So I thought I was a little concerned entering this game just because we had only seen this group for 2 halves, and to me, I was a little concerned. Like, is that enough? Have we seen enough? Have they had just enough time and reps to establish a rhythm, to establish rapport, or to reestablish it rather? Just because obviously there's a lot of continuity here, but like the starting lineup looked great together as expected. They closed last season 18-6. They won tonight, so 19-6 with that group as the starters. Now going back to last season. And the bench was a bit up and down, but like I thought Jackson came in, made an impact. Dalton had some good minutes. Max was active defensively, didn't have a good offensive performance. Gabe Vincent, I thought sneakily had a nice impact. And then, Bronny came in and had the moment with LeBron, and I'm kind of bearing the lead maybe with that, but it was cool to see those two share the floor for the first time officially. Obviously, they did so in the preseason, but you had Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. there. You had Lil Wayne there with his son, Shannon Sharp there with his daughter. So you had some celebrities with their kids, and just kind of like that moment of LeBron and Bronny. And I thought they did it at the right time, and they did it like JJ realized that they got outscored 7-2 with Bronny on the floor. So he didn't let that compound into a bigger run. And so, I mean, we got that moment. I don't know if we'll get it again. I don't know when we'll get it again. I don't think it'll be Friday against Phoenix. I could be wrong on that, but I assume the Lakers go to a 9-man, a little bit of a tighter rotation against the Suns now that has happened. But history was made, and again, Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. were there. They were with LeBron and Bronny pregame, taking photos with them and sharing a moment with them. So I thought that was cool that happened. But yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest takeaway was like everything that JJ has talked about, everything that this team has talked about. It's one thing to hear about it. It's one thing to see clips of it in practice. It's even one thing to see bits of it in the preseason. But tonight they implemented just about all of it. And I thought the process, like the process led to the results, but the process, if they're going to play like this and continue to get to the rim, continue to live in the paint and put pressure on opposing defenses and draw fouls, like that to me is that's the way they should be playing. And then if you have the 3-point shot or a guy gets hot, then you're going to take more threes. But tonight, only 33s, but they only made 5. So it kind of made sense why they weren't forcing it from beyond the arc. And I thought they kind of did that in the preseason. And tonight it was like, no, they're actually taking better shots. And I thought the shot quality was the best I've seen from them through the first 6 preseason games. And then tonight. So I got a couple of super chats here from Chris Does Stuff 28. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I will get to your question once I get to the Q&A part, but I do appreciate it. And you got asked about what class you have to take, and I will touch on that in terms of journalism. But second takeaway for me was Anthony Marshawn Davis. That was a nice reminder of how great and how dominant Anthony Davis is. 36 points, 16 rebounds, including 3 offensive, 13 for 15 from the free throw line, 11 for 23. So AD was far and away the Lakers' number one option. He was the hub. They were feeding him constantly. He was attacking Rudy Gobert. He was attacking Julius Randle. He was attacking Naz Reid. Minnesota had no answer for Anthony Davis. And this is the dude who I and others who cover the Lakers have been saying should be in that top 5 conversation, should be in the defensive player of the year conversation. I said with Pete on our preview podcast before the preseason that my spicy take was AD was going to be in the top 5 in MVP voting. And with nights like this, I mean, if the Lakers continue to win at a 50-plus win pace, the way that they have with that starting group, and AD puts up numbers like this, he's going to be in the MVP conversation, if not the favorite, obviously, depending on where the Lakers are in the standings. But like, 4 assists, 1 steal, 3 blocks. Like AD was just incredible. He was taking it to Rudy Gobert. He was trash talking him. He had that incredible block on him. And I just think AD, he to me, this was a bit of a passing of the torch from LeBron to AD. AD took 7 more shots than him and had 14 more free throws than him. Like I can't remember. I'm sure it happened last season. I can't remember like a game that was so decidedly in AD's favor in terms of usage compared to LeBron, where AD, and it's not like this was like an easy matchup. This wasn't like the Portland Trailblazers or one of these like bottom lottery teams. Like this was the best defense in the league with the reigning defensive player of the year, and he was food for Anthony Davis. So AD just incredible. Like he hit a 3. And I thought the Lakers just, again, as we saw at times in the preseason, whenever they'd go a couple possessions without AD touching the ball, that next possession, it would be, let's run an action, let's run a set to get AD involved. So I thought, like, it's by no means surprising that AD had a performance like this, but I thought for it to come in a statement victory on opening night, nationally televised game, everyone's watching. The whole NBA world's watching. This to me, like, I think AD was the best player today, not just in this game, but period, across both games. I know Jason Tatum had a really good game as well, but AD with just his offensive, the offensive load he's carrying, but also the defensive load that he carries every single night, especially with the Lakers not having necessarily lockdown perimeter guys right now. I mean, this was an incredible performance from AD. So I think AD reminded everybody, like, he's that dude. I think he's their best player. I think he's going to be the focal point of the offense. And I think he's going to have a career year, in my opinion, probably his best year as a Laker and one of the best years of his career. So I think AD's in store for a big season. And then the third takeaway for me was we finally got a real glimpse at the rotation. I had put together on my preview episode with Cranjis, sort of looking at the first two halves that they had played and piecing it together of like, okay, if we extrapolate this into a full game, what does it look like? So tonight, 37, almost 38 minutes for AD, 35 for LeBron, 35 for Rui. So front court plays heavy minutes, 36 for Austin, 34 for D'Lo. Just under 12 for Max. He was in foul trouble. He had 5. 17 for Gabe. He led the bench. 15 for Jackson. Just under 16 for Dalton. And the 3 or so for Bronny, in the second quarter. So if we take away the Bronny minutes, because again, I assume that goes to Max or Gabe or Dalton. I think this looks about right. I don't know if you want to play the starters 34, 35 minutes every single night, but I think those guys should all be at least 30 minimum, probably 32 minimum. So I liked, like, this is a somewhat of a top heavy roster, and Max came in. Gabe continues to not really have his jumper. Jackson made an impact offensively, but I think teams can attack and exploit him defensively. Dalton hit a 3, and I thought competed well defensively, but maybe Dalton's a guy that could play a little bit more, get more involved offensively. But I think, like, for the Lakers, it really was the strength was Rui got off to a great start. He was playing with force and ferocity, and he dunked on Gobert, then he blocked him. I thought Rui played with great spirit and energy. LeBron, I thought had a slow start, obviously was in single digits until I think early in the fourth quarter. So it was, but by his standards, and he had a quiet preseason, and I think he's still kind of ramping up. AD obviously had the big game, and then Austin, 12 points, 9 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds. LA put the ball more in his hands, as we saw in the preseason, but I thought Austin really competed well on the glass. He was a big part of that. D'Lo had a quiet game, but did step up in the fourth quarter, had some big assists, had that big floater jumper in the paint. So I thought, like, the starters all looked really good. They have established themselves as, like, clearly the 5 best players on this team, in my opinion, and I think they all should be playing 32 plus minutes. So I thought the rotation, one interesting thing was JJ ended up flipping the minutes with Austin and D'Lo in terms of, like, when they, so in the preseason it was often Austin would come out and then he'd come back in late in the first, and this time it was D'Lo who did that, and then D'Lo ended up coming back in, and then he started the second quarter. So I thought, like, JJ going with the inverse of it was kind of interesting. He ended up pairing more D'Lo and LeBron, and then Austin and AD, whereas for most of the preseason he ended up pairing Austin and LeBron and D'Lo and AD. I do like those pairings better. So I wonder, I don't know if it had to do with the Bronny situation and them trying to restructure the rotation, at least in the first half, to kind of figure that out. But yeah, I mean, it overall made sense. And again, I think it's positive to see the Lakers' best players playing a lot, the Lakers' best lineup playing a lot together. And 4 of the 5 guys had a positive plus minus. LeBron was the one guy at -6. So that, to me, was like, again, in terms of shot quality, there's a lot to like. Lakers competing on the glass, Lakers not turning the ball over. And also, I think a big thing, and this goes back to the JJ takeaway, was, like, we've seen this movie before with the Lakers where they get out to a big lead, they get out to a double-digit lead, and they blow it. And then they let go of the rope, and they end up losing the game in heartbreaking fashion. A team hits a game winner on them. A team hits several clutch jumpers on them. This was the opposite. And I thought JJ called good timeouts, timely timeouts. And it was very much like, okay, let's regroup, let's reset. Like, this is okay, let's get an easy bucket here. And early in the fourth quarter, Minnesota got the lead down to 4. And I think last year's version of the Lakers ends up losing this game and ends up potentially losing it by like double figures with the momentum that Minnesota had at that point. But LA came back out. They ran a good set. They got a bucket. They scored 6 points in a row, extended it back to 10, and then Minnesota called a timeout. So I thought that the Lakers really like responded well to adversity in this game. They responded well to Minnesota's runs. They didn't let go of the rope, and they regrouped really well. So I thought like you can see a team take on the demeanor of their coach and their coaching staff, and I thought that the Lakers had the proper approach tonight and the proper perspective with it, where they didn't overreact, they didn't panic, they didn't worry about Minnesota going on a run. They understood, hey, if we continue to do what got us that lead, we're going to be fine, and we're going to come out of this game with a win, which is exactly what happened. So I thought that was especially for opening night and for day one really together in terms of like actual games with stakes. That to me was a very encouraging sign, just because, again, I think this same group last year probably loses this game if it were under the previous regime. So I don't really know how else to say it. But let's get into the Q&A. I know you guys have done a couple of super chats, so I appreciate it. So Chris does stuff 28. I can do like a separate video, or if you guys want to do like a more personal Q&A with me, I would love to do that and answer your guys' questions. I will just say, so I went to USC for journalism. So the question from Chris does stuff 28 is, hi, what class do I need to do to do this like you? So I mean, I went to USC for journalism. I studied there, but did a combination of print and broadcast journalism with a sports media studies minor, and then worked my way up out of school, first at Fox Sports, then ESPN, and then eventually The Athletic. So I can answer. I appreciate the super chat. I can't answer your question in a different setting, but for now, I want to focus on the game. Next one from Shabujan. Shabugan, Rui played with force, you say. Would you also say he was living and loving in the paint? Minnesota is a hell of a ball club. So some shout outs to Darvin there. Thank you for the super chat. And yeah, I mean, look, Rui, like I've said this before. I said it before the Denver series. I was like, someone needs to slap Rui in the chest, give him a shot of fireball, and like just have him go out there and play with the physicality and the force and the energy that he's capable of playing with. And we see it in flashes. And even in this game, I think it fizzled out a little bit progressively after a hot start. But when Rui plays like that and he's just bulldozing people and he's like, just obliterating people and being active and aggressive and assertive, like that's the Rui that the Lakers need. And I thought they fed him well in terms of, like he's kind of the one guy that still is living in the mid-range a bit, but some of those shots have been a little bit closer, that they've come in the paint. So even if it is technically like a mid-range jumper, it's at least in the paint a little bit closer. So I thought I was really impressed with Rui. And defensively, he had a tough assignment with Julius Randle, and Randle didn't have a good game, but part of that I thought was because of Rui and Rui's activity. And we know he's a good post defender. We know that he can slide his feet with guys who are not much quicker than him. So yeah. And then Chris Dustuff follows up with another one. Yes, please, a video about that more, and thank you. Okay, I will do that. So I appreciate it. Okay, I'm ready for the Q&A. Let's get into it. Dominic John, do you think the Lakers will trade D'Lo? I think it's too early to. I don't want to overreact to this game in any direction. Like I think if anything, this game was just a confirmation of a lot of what we already knew and saw. So I would assume that the plan is still to at least explore the D'Lo situation down the road. But I don't know if his game necessarily swayed it really in either direction. I think it's always kind of been if they're going to make a trade, he's the one guy. Now, one thing I will say on this is like, obviously, if the Lakers get out to a really good start and are just a really good team, it could go one of two ways, right? Like you could look at it as, do we want to break this group up? Is it worth it? Or you could look at, okay, well, we're in a position to potentially contend, to compete for a championship. And now let's do that win now trade. Let's take the big swing. Let's put the first round pick or both first round picks on the table. So could go one of two ways. I think at a minimum, if they are looking really good and this continues, then I think you have to at least think about attaching a first round pick to a guy like Gabe, Vando, depending on where he's at with his injury progress. Like you maybe look at some of the bench guys and say, can we upgrade with the pick and bring in another piece? And maybe you keep D'Lo or you shift his role depending on, the type of player you bring in. So that's one thing. But for now, I don't think this really swings the D'Lo conversation either way. Like I don't think he had a great game to be honest, but I thought he competed defensively, and I think he's going to shoot the ball better. JJ actually talked about it after the game, that he said they were shooting with new basketballs, and he didn't know that until he caught a loose ball out of bounds and he grabbed it and he was like, this is a new ball. And so he said he's actually going to complain to the league about it, that they should only be playing with worn-in basketballs. So he joked that he's neurotic. But let me see. Next question. Jackson Matisic, how was the vibes around the locker room after tonight? So because of the nature of post game, the locker room actually cleared out pretty quickly. So typically how it goes, we go in the press conference room, JJ Redick goes and talks to us. By the time we got into the locker room, a lot of the guys were gone. AD was talking, Rui had already talked, and then Bron and Bronny went at the podium. So I didn't get the full post-game vibe. Obviously, JJ being drenched and getting the water poured on him, I think that was a good side. LeBron was in a great mood. AD was in a great mood. Bronny was in a great mood. So I can't say that the people that I saw or interacted with were all in a positive mood. So I think this group is very confident. They are bought in, and they were celebrating LeBron and Bronny, JJ getting his first win, them just getting their first win of the season. So I will say that the vibes were good for anyone I saw or interacted with. I saw Dalton walking out with his jersey, and he had the NBA entertainment crew filming him and talking to him. So like, I thought it was overall, nothing but positive vibes from what I saw, but I didn't get the full picture in terms of like going in the locker room where 12, 15 guys are in there. So it was a little bit different. Let's see. DeMarcus, do you think Max should be a little bit more aggressive on offense at times? Yes, though I didn't think that was Max's issue tonight. I thought he took 3 threes. I thought he was assertive of when he had a sliver of space. Like that's really been my biggest thing with Max. And I know the previous coaching staff's biggest thing with Max, at least offensively, was like, when you're open, just shoot it. Like, you're a good shooter. If you have a sliver of space, if you can take the 3, take it. And, we'll live with the results. And I think Max is such a team first guy and always wants to be making the right play, that it could sometimes work to his detriment, where he will pass down a good shot to try and get a great shot, or he'll pass down a semi-contested look to try and find a look for someone else. And while his intentions are good, and that can be a good process offensively, he shot 40% on catch and shoot threes across his first 2 seasons. So like, he's a good shooter, and I think he just has to let it fly. And also, I think something that D'Lo did last year that I think what was underrated was like, he worked on catching really bad passes, especially like that was part of his pregame routine, and I still is. I saw him warming up a little bit today. Is like having the passer pass you bad shots. Bad passes, and taking shots from weird catching angles, because typically, when you have someone rebounding for you and passing to you, a lot of times it's like perfect passes in your pocket, and you're just going up in one motion. But sometimes a pass is going to get deflected, or it's going to be a bullet pass, or they're going to misread where you were, or maybe you're shifting or something, and you're going to catch a pass by your knees, or you're going to have to jump up and reach above your head and catch it like a wide receiver. So like you have to be able to catch a ball under different circumstances, non-ideal circumstances, and then rise up into your shooting motion. So I think that there was one play in the left corner where LeBron fed Max. It was not a great pass. And Max, he didn't airball it, but it was almost close to an airball. And I think part of it was just because of him going into his shooting motion, kind of, just reaching over from the left side and bringing it over. And like, I think he needs to work on more of those plays. And maybe he has. I haven't obviously seen all the work he's done, but that would be my one thing was like, I felt like he got a couple of bad passes on kick out passes. And then his shot was affected from my vantage point based on the bad pass. But I think at some point, like the best shooters can still make those shots and still figure out ways to adjust the shot and just the shooting motion. So I think that's one thing for Max. But I think Max is really talented. I thought that he 5 fouls obviously ended up impacting his minutes, but I thought he was aggressive defensively. He had a tough assignment facing up against Anthony Edwards. That's as tough as it gets on the perimeter in terms of like a 2 or a 3. He's athletic. He can shoot up, shoot and rise up over you. So that's a tough assignment. I thought Max did like decent to solid, depending on how you want to look at it. Thought he got involved in the rebounding battle. He had a couple of nice tip outs. So I think Max, like this was not his best performance for sure. And he ended up playing the 9th most minutes on the team, which I don't expect to continue. I think that was very much due to the fouls. But I think to your point, like he needs to be aggressive. And I would like to see him attack closeouts if teams start to, aggressively close out to him. And then he could dunk on someone or then he can make the right read, right? But if he's got the space, he's got to take the shot. And so far, I think he's done a better job in the preseason, but I still think he has a little bit of ways to go. Let's see. Another one from Shibujin. By the way, as you guys see, if you do a super chat, that will be one way to cut the question line. I appreciate it. Any word on Koloko? Oddly quiet on that front. No. So JJ was asked pregame about Christian Koloko. He said that there's no update. Obviously, ESPN reported that it was going to be soon. I saw Anthony Irwin reported that it was, that there's no real update or moment. Or I don't want to paraphrase what he was saying, but essentially, there's no real update. We don't know when he's going to necessarily be back. So that's more in line with kind of what I've heard. It's just been pretty quiet on that front. So I would assume that the Lakers did not sign him to not play, right? So there had to be some indication and optimism that he was eventually going to be cleared, but it is yet to happen. So it's just something we're going to be tracking, but I think he certainly could help. Legoat James, Lakers are a bad matchup for Minnesota. Minnesota is smaller now by losing Cat. I agree with this, and this was a reason why I thought LA should try and get Minnesota if they could last postseason. I thought that would have been a series that they could have won in 6 or 7 games. And when I just did the season preview with Kranjis, I said, based on my personal standings of how I felt things were going to play out, I had LA playing. I forgot if it was Minnesota or Dallas, and I think it was Minnesota in round 1, and then maybe losing to Dallas in round 2. But I think like this is a matchup that the Lakers can win because Minnesota typically has a size advantage and a paint and a physicality advantage. And one thing I didn't even mention, LA outscored them 72-40 in points in the paint. So they did outscore LA 31-19 in terms of second chance points. They did out rebound them technically 47-46. But LA, in terms of shots at the rim, getting to the rim, they dominated this game in comparison with Minnesota. So I thought that was very encouraging. It's very in line with what we've seen from this group in previous seasons. But also, I think it just shows like they do, I think, have a bit of a match. Like outside of Ant, and Ant can go off at any time. And if he drops 40, maybe this is a different result and we're having a different conversation right now. But outside of Ant and LA not really having a guy other than Vando once he's back to really put on him, I think like the Lakers, especially because AD can just do whatever he wants against Gobert, I I think this is a good matchup for LA. And LeBron didn't even really have that good of a game. If LeBron has a LeBron game and he has 25, 8, and 8, like maybe this is a 20-point blowout. So I think you can kind of make that argument either way. But I do think LA matches up well with Minnesota. From Stephen W, AR played well tonight, unless your expectation of him is a 20-point per game third option. I agree with you. And I mean, he was technically tied for third on the team in field goal attempts with Rui. If you factor in free throw attempts, Rui had 4, Austin had 1. So Rui was slightly ahead usage wise, but Austin didn't have a great shooting game, was 6 for 14, 0 for 5. From deep, but again, 4 offensive rebounds, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 fouls, a steal, a block. Like I just think, again, and not even gonna mention the comparison of like Austin versus D'Lo, but I just think Austin. Well, I did just mention it, but I just think Austin does the little stuff, and Austin competes at a certain level that like. I think you saw more of that from the group overall tonight, but like no matter what, even if he doesn't have a good shooting night, he gets you 9 rebounds and is second in the team in rebounds, leads the team in offensive rebounding. And he's doing that against one of the biggest and best rebounding, one of the biggest teams in the league, one of the arguably the best defensive team in the league, one of the better rebounding teams in the league. Like this was not an easy matchup. It wasn't like they were playing a bunch of like 6'3" dudes. Like, this is a big team, a big, long, athletic team. And I thought Austin was able to slip through the cracks in a positive way and affect the game with his rebounding. Question from Jords_Santiago. Any thoughts on LeBron tonight? I think some people would say the decline has begun. I will say LeBron looked gassed at times. Like he called for a sub early in the first quarter. For Max, even earlier than I think Max was supposed to come in. And LeBron had a bit of an, I would say, like, not uncharacteristics, maybe the wrong word, but like he didn't, I don't think he looked quite like himself in the preseason. So this is something I'm monitoring. I don't want to overreact or I would hate to write off LeBron James when we have 21 years of him defying all expectations and odds, and especially later in his career, as people have been waiting for the decline, really just has not happened. So this was not a good opening game, I would say, but I think part of it is maybe him still getting his conditioning. I think that there's the ask defensively is high in terms of rotating and what the Lakers want their off-ball defenders to do. So I want to go back and rewatch the film, and that's kind of a caveat with all this is like I'm giving it to you as I remember it, as I took down notes, but like I'm watching it from the baseline, so my vantage point is a little bit different than the TV vantage point. So, but I will say like LeBron he's lacked the explosion and the burst that we're accustomed to. He did have a nice dunk tonight. Did have a couple of blocks. So like. It's not like LeBron taking a step back in terms of his athleticism is still a 0.1% athlete in the NBA, even at 40 years old or about to be. So I'm monitoring this. I do think there's a shift more toward AD being the focal point and AD clearly being the best player on the team. I would agree with that if that's part of the point you're making. But the decline, like, he still was impactful in the fourth quarter. He still made some big plays, and I don't want to let's give it a couple weeks before we say LeBron is declining. Okay, I see people arguing about Austin. That it's always nice. Let's see. Question from Puppy Chow 302. Game 1 over. Was Ham that bad, or is JJ that good? Both. I think the correct answer is both. I think JJ has plucked a lot of the low-hanging fruit that Darvin, for whatever reason, didn't pluck in terms of starting this lineup from game 1, playing their best players all 34 plus minutes, reducing, calling timely timeouts. I think pushing the right buttons in terms of the rotation and countering what Minnesota was doing. So I think like some of that was basic stuff that I think Darvin came up short in. But some of it, I also think like JJ, the style of offense he runs, I think is somewhat unique and is a more modern approach. And obviously they're not the only team running this style of offense, but I think some of the sets and some of the actions and I think they've done a lot of nice cross screening. He's been really focused on the details and looking at, I think a guy like D'Lo has actually been really impressive with his cutting and his screening. So I would say like the attention to detail and the type of offense they're running and some of the zoning and some of the creativity on both sides of the ball, I give that credit to JJ, and I don't necessarily hold that against Darvin. But starting Rui, Austin, and D'Lo and playing those guys a certain amount of minutes and empowering them and making sure AD doesn't go too long without touching the ball, that stuff I think you can hold against Darvin, and that's where I think JJ's coming in and making an impact. Doggy, question from Doggy. Do you believe Rui will be the third option? No, I still think it's going to be Austin or D'Lo most nights, but Rui had it going early, and I think the Lakers can, continue to feed him, and it made sense. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe Rui takes another step offensively and becomes more the third option, but I just think with the amount that that Austin and D'Lo are going to have the ball, I think it's going to be one of those two guys most nights. And even looking at the shot distribution, like all five starters took at least 12 shots, and Rui was at 14, Austin was at 14, D'Lo was at 12. So they were all basically right there. I'm going to assume that, and Austin had 4 assists, D'Lo had 5. So like, if you actually look at the usage, they might even be slightly ahead of Rui. I'd be interested to see that once the usage rate is up on NBA.com. So I don't like Rui's going to have his nights, and we know Rui as a fifth option is a luxury. I still think in the aggregate, he ends up being the fifth option in this lineup. But again, if he has a night like this, like it's nothing but a luxury for the Lakers offense. Let's see. Gonna wrap in a couple minutes. Quality Kev said the camera quality is top tier. Thank you, Quality Kev. You know quality. Seeing some arguments about Vando. I love you guys in the chat. This is fun. I'm seeing a question about Koloko. No update on Koloko. Question here from Dark Galaxy. Jovan, would you give Connect more minutes? I feel like the defensive stuff is overblown and he gives the offense spacing and draws a lot of attention with his shooting. Yes, I think you are correct here. I think Minnesota. So the one thing I'll say with Minnesota, and this is partly why I think they're a good matchup for the Lakers, is they are very reliant on Anthony Edwards. Like they ended up with 6 guys in double figures, but that was like midway through the third quarter, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Ant was the only guy in double figures. And I think this is where they miss Karl Anthony Towns. But in general, this is an offense that really funnels through Anthony Edwards. To a lesser extent, Mike Conley is like a playmaker, but it's really an Ant Edwards heavy offense. And I think the Lakers are, when they kind of know it's going through one guy and they could shift the defense, like Ant, looking at it, he had 3 assists, but he didn't, I think, again, kind of midway through the third quarter up to that point, he had like 0 assists or 1 assist. Like, and I talked about it, I actually did Alan Sliwa's show this morning, and we talked about the game, and I was like, he was like, what's the next step for Anthony Edwards? And I said the playmaking. And I think, again, if you can shift your defense and force him into some difficult decisions, I think a lot of times he's either going to take the shot or he's going to shot. Like he had 4 turnovers tonight. He had more turnovers than assists, which is a win for the Lakers defense. So I think the way that Minnesota plays offense also plays into the strengths of the Lakers defense. Whereas a team like Golden State that is very movement and motion and off-ball screening and a lot of shooting and a lot of different ways they can attack you. And obviously they got Steph, but even aside from that, they have capable shooters, ball handlers, and it's a little bit more of a balanced offensive attack. That's the type of offense that I think gives the Lakers a little bit more problems. Teams like Sacramento, Denver, with Jokic and the cutting off of him and the way that they run their offense. So I think it kind of depends on the type of offense that a team is running that can maybe exploit Dalton's defensive limitations and really the defensive limitations of this team overall. So I am interested to see, like, Phoenix is also a bit more of an ISO heavy team, though they just have elite shot making where they can kind of get away with it. And we'll see what that looks like Friday. But then Saturday, back-to-back, Lakers with back-to-backs, it's been kind of crazy to start the season. But Sacramento, like, that's going to be a true test of their defense and how they handle the way that Sacramento plays. But to your point about Dalton, I think the defense, it's still not great on the perimeter. Like, I think he, as a point of attack guy, he can be blown by, and he just doesn't have the lateral quickness to hang with a lot of good guards and wings. And I think he should always probably be on the weakest defender unless he's out there with D'Lo. But he does contest at the rim well. He does rotate well. He's aggressive. He's athletic. So I think that helps. But offensively, to your point, like, if the Lakers are going to struggle to shoot with the rest of the group, like, Dalton's the one guy that he went 1 for 3 on threes tonight. But every time he shot, you could tell, like, he's already a crowd favorite. The crowd was going nuts in anticipation anytime he was shooting. So I'm with you. Like, I think Dalton, he was second on the bench or off the bench in minutes. I would not be surprised if he's first pretty soon. Like, tonight, I think they needed a bit more of Gabe and his defense and digging into Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Mike Conley. And, like, they needed that from Gabe. But on maybe it's a shootout against Phoenix again, a team that Dalton just lit up for 35 points, and they need more of that shooting and whatnot. So I would not be surprised if he plays more on Friday. Grown Folk Beats, what seed are we putting LA at when all is said and done? It's a great question. So I, entering today, had LA as the 6th seed, and that is optimistic. By national standards, most people have LA as like a 8, 9, 10 seed. So I'm already higher on the Lakers than I think that the national consensus. But I said in a comment today, someone asked me about the Lakers' ceiling versus their floor. And I said their ceiling, I think, is a 3 seed and somewhere around 52 wins. So I think tonight's performance, you saw the ceiling of, I think this could be a team that's right there behind maybe Oklahoma City and Denver, Oklahoma City and Dallas. I think Oklahoma City is going to be the 1 seed, and then probably Denver or Dallas is the 2 seed. And LA, ceiling wise, can be up there in that conversation. I think more realistically is like 5 or 6 seed. But again, I mean, this is like, this team looks really good on both sides of the floor. And I just, that's such a tough starting lineup to match up with. Like, if any team could really disrupt the starting lineup and give them problems, it's Minnesota with McDaniels and Edwards and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and DiVincenzo and Gobert. And they bothered them some. It's not like the Lakers had a cakewalk offensively, but they still were able to get good shots, get to the rim, cut, screen, slip. Like, I just thought LA's offense looked really good. And if they could do that against Minnesota, imagine what they're going to do against Phoenix. Imagine what they're going to do against Sacramento. Like, I just think this offense is going to be top 10, if not top 5, and has the upside of being like top 3. And then I will do 2 more questions, then I got to wrap. Seeing some Dalton stuff. Okay, if you guys got a question, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm about to wrap up because I got to finish writing. Appreciate you all for tuning in. I believe this is the biggest live stream we have done. What a way to start the year with the Lakers getting a win, proving to 1-0. LeBron and Bronny making their history. JJ getting his first win. LA snapping the opening night losing streak. I mean, this is my 5th season covering the team. I've yet to see them win a game, and I've covered 3 ring nights now. So let's see. Question. I'll start here. Tali Khalifa, what's the easiest path to open a roster spot? The easiest path would be doing so it's not waiving. Under the new CBA, if the Lakers waive someone, that's still going to count against the cap unless someone were to claim the rights to that player. If they're just going to sit there Once they clear waivers. But otherwise, that's just going to be dead salary. So that, with the Lakers being under $50,000 below the second apron, that's not going to work. The easiest way was really the only way is a trade, and it could be a bigger trade where the Lakers do a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, a 3-for-2, or they could do some sort of consolidation trade where they trade one of the minimum guys. They would have to attach some type of asset to incentivize in a rival team, but do like a second round pick or a top 40 protected pick, second round pick or whatever, top 45. And, or if it's one of the young, like maybe a team is really high on JHS and you could just dump JHS, and technically you got to attach something in it, or you got to send something back so that maybe they send cash, or they send a top, sometimes teams will send like a top 55 protected pick that's like never going to convey. So like that, really the only way to do it is a trade. And it's really like one of two trades, which is either a trade where they're sending out more guys in like a 2-for-1, 3-for-2, 3-for-1, etc., or them doing a salary dump trade where they are specifically sending a player to a team that has the flexibility to take in that player, but LA would have to attach an asset. So I think they should have done that over the summer. I was a big proponent of that. I thought they were going to do that. They ended up not doing that. That's why, like, when JJ's been asked about the roster, he says, well, we didn't have a roster spot open. And like, that's technically true, but they still could have made a move. And they still, like, if they did it early in the process, so you saw Dallas did a salary dump trade, Denver did a salary dump trade, and those are, I think, were the only two off the top of my head in terms of like contenders. So like, you could have done it. Lakers could have done it early in free agency, but they didn't. So that's the only way. Euthanasia, like and subscribe. Yes, please. If you're watching this and you have not subscribed yet, please do so on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the audio version, that will be up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and your podcast platform of choice. Please be sure to follow. So thank you guys. Joe Ingles, Jovan, could the Lakers get Steven Adams? Technically, yeah. I don't know what his contract is off the top of my head. Yes, but I think Houston is high on him. Seeing some trade stuff. I no updates on trade talks. Question or comment from Jackson Matisic. I hope I'm not butchering that. Jovan, not a question, but thank you for your coverage of the Lakers. You're killing it. I appreciate you. Thank you, Jackson. Yotis Lee. Did the Lakers win because Julius Randle put in minimal effort? That might have been part of it. Puppy Chow 302 already subscribed. Thank you, Puppy Chow. And so I think I'm going to wrap now. If you have a question for me, either answer or ask it. Sorry. You could tell my brain's a bit fried right now. It's been a long day, but ask it either on the next stream, which I will be streaming on Friday after the Lakers-Suns game, or ask it in the comment section below on YouTube. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening and interacting. If you are watching this on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back either later today or Thursday with a deeper dive on my impressions of the opener. I'm going to rewatch the game, take some notes, break down some film, break down the stats, and come with a different perspective, a better perspective, and maybe my opinion will change on a couple things. So be on the lookout for that. Probably will be a solo show, but maybe I'll bring a guest on. But thank you guys so much again for watching and listening and interacting. And I will be back a little bit later in the week, and I'll be interacting with you guys very soon. So thank you.